Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, good morning, good evening for all around the world. Thank you very much for taking your time to join this webinar today. It's a pleasure to have all of you joining this webinar where we will be discussing about changes in documentation and processes regarding to the management system certification, which is applicable for all auditors and partners that we work to provide management system certification services worldwide. It's a pleasure to have all of you, and thank you once again for taking your time to join this meeting. For your information, this meeting will be recorded and will be distributed afterwards for your future reference. My name is Tim Rama. I'm the Managing Director at PCB, and this meeting will be presented by my two colleagues, Ms. Carolina Cabezas, the Compliance Director, and Mr. Esat Sahiti, the Compliance Operations Supervisor for Management System Certification. We consider this presentation and the future steps to be very important, as for the past weeks and months, I would say, we have been working very hard to defining, improving, and to upgrading the level of documentation and the processes when it comes to the management system certification, with the goal and the objective in mind that we want to become the most efficient, fastest, and the highest quality certification body in the world. But of course, to do this, there are several steps that we need to work, and for this, we would need your full cooperation to make this possible. In regard to this, I will not take more of your time, but will ask Esat to proceed with the presentation introductions. So I hope you enjoy it, and for anything, feel free to ask questions in the chat box you have here, or feel free to contact us via email afterwards. Thank you very much and enjoy the presentation.
Thank you, Tim. Firstly, warm welcome to all the attendees participating in this webinar. Based on our projection, this webinar should not take more than 1 hour, and this webinar will be recorded and will be available to be shared with you in case you may need it. If you have any question, as stated by Tim, please write it on the chat box and we'll try to answer within this webinar or send you the answers via email. To begin with, I would like to introduce you to the presenters panel. We have here Carolina Cabezas. It's my pleasure to introduce you to her. She's our compliance director. Carolina, she holds a degree in industrial engineering from San Francisco de Quito University in Ecuador, and a master's degree in manufacturing consultancy from Cranfield University in United Kingdom. She's also certified as ISO 9001 lead auditor, Lean Six Sigma Green Belt, and Lean IT Foundation. She's an expert in process management, continuous improvement and management systems design, and auditing and implementation. Regarding myself, my name is Esat Sahiti. I have graduated from Rochester Institute of Technology in New York, and now I'm planning to pursue my MBA studies at the Pecb University on the next academic year. I hold credentials in information security, quality management systems, and also auditing techniques. I have been with PCB for 2 years now. My position within Pecb Ms is the compliance operations supervisor, and I'm responsible for managing the MS audit and certification processes as part of the accreditation against ISO IEC 17021, including the auditor certification program as well. Now, here are the topics that will be covered in this webinar. Part 1 will cover mainly information about Pecb Ms, the new entity that we have incorporated. Part 2, it will be mainly for the updated audit documentation that happened lately. Part 3 will together walk through the best scenario certification audit process. And on part 4, which is a very important part, we'll share with you the new auditor program scheme and its main requirements. Part 5 will be focused in the important commitment deadlines on using the new process and the forms. What are the main objectives of this webinar? As you can notice, main objectives will be keeping of our auditors and network in general informed about the updates in our side. In this respect, Pecb Ms is going to send regular emails to its network whenever any update is planned to occur in the future. So when we have updates, you'll be informed ahead. Our aim is to establish a coherent communication and avoid laxities in the whole cooperation line. Being up to date is essential in this industry, especially when we plan to become the fastest certification body worldwide, as stated by Tim before. Now, what is Pecb Ms? We have had the opportunity to communicate and work together with almost all attendees in this webinar. You have probably noticed that we had some changes or updates in almost all segments lately, including additional staff, new website, new emails, new processes, etc. What happened here is that as of November 2018, we have invested a lot in bringing together a talented team of professionals, building effective processes, and updating documentation profoundly. Why? Because our utmost objective is to become a global benchmark in the management system certification industry. However, we are Pecb. We're still Pecb. We share the same mission, vision, and values. Pecb Group remains our parent company. Pecb Ms is a specialized company in the certification of management systems for a wide range of international standards, and as a global provider of audit and certification services, Pecb Ms offers its expertise on multiple fields, including here information security, quality management system, business continuity, service management, anti-bribery management systems, etc. We are accredited against ISO IEC 17021 and ISO IEC 17065 for a wide set of ISO standards. Basically, the core focus of this training or webinar will be ISO IEC 17021, which is the MS certification program. Related to our accreditation, here are the standards on which Pecb Ms is accredited for. In this respect, I want to inform you that Pecb has finished the scope extension assessment on April for a wide range of critical codes for ISO 9001 and 14001. These additional codes cover the most demanded business sectors or industries from the market. In addition, we are in the process of adding ISO 13485 medical devices under our accreditation. For this, we'll inform you as soon as the assessment is completed. Now, as mentioned above, our utmost aim is to become the fastest and most efficient certification body worldwide, where the client will receive the certification decision notice within 1 week, counted from the last day of the audit. When setting this objective altogether with the top management, we have also counted in your commitment and cooperation, which is a determinant factor in this process. What we have done in our side is that we have structured the processes in such a format where you would have an assigned point of contact for specific inquiry as indicated in this slide. As you can see, there are 2 generic positions within our team. One is MS Processing Manager. This position is responsible for reviewing the MS application forms, respectively setting the audit duration. In this phase, we'll also conduct the risk assessment, of course, and decide whether we should go with that respective client or no. In addition, this position is responsible for issuing certificates, including here draft, temporary, and hard copy certificate. Another very important generic position within our company is auditor program manager. And you may want to contact this position for any issue related to your auditor status, or if you have any friend that is asking to become a PCB certified auditor, this is the position that will help you. What I would call the most efficient process improvement is having 2 MS certification coordinator positions. The sole task of these positions is reviewing of audit documentation and coordinating audits. Basically, this will be the most frequented contact point for auditors. Compliance operations supervisor and the compliance director, of course, will be there for you and will serve as positions for escalation points and to support the process whenever needed. In addition, both of these positions hold the role of certification committee within Pecb Ms. I have here a very important note. Processing time, you can see on the right side of this slide. Processing time in our side is dependent on the response time from auditor. At this point, we'll be very demanding in respecting the deadlines from auditors as well. Now, I will walk you through the updated documents. When talking about updated documents, we mean all Pecb Ms policies, procedures, auditing forms, auditor documentation and guidelines, etc. In general, all the applicable documents so far have been rebranded. However, we have updated the content in many of them. In addition, we have created new ones as well. And I'd like to use this opportunity and to introduce you swiftly to some changes related to the forms. The MS application form, this form is mandatory to be filled and submitted to Pecb Ms for each client. It serves as a root document based on which we conduct the risk assessment and set the audit duration. We have, in this form, we have added the question, reason for exclusion of employees from the audit scope. Of course, if excluded. This is because we have detected that in some cases, the number of employees within the scope is very limited compared with the total number of employees, especially in some standards such as ISO 14001, Environmental Management System, where everybody within the scope has actually some role or some responsibility. Another important feature that needs to be defined in MS application is the certification scope. We expect that the same certification scope will be followed in audit plan and also audit report throughout the entire audit process. In order to define the certification scope, we have also created a separate policy, which is called Policy for Scope Statement, for which we'll talk shortly. Another new form that we have created is the recertification application form. This is a new form. It is short and requires basic information about the company. Why? Because we want to avoid collection of redundant information in cases where Pecb Ms client is asking for recertification. We have also updated the audit plan template. You know that audit plan is mandatory to be filled and submitted for review and approval to Pecb. With the new deadlines, this has to be at least 2 weeks before the audit commences. And the audit plan shall be written or composed only by lead auditor. This form was updated by adding additional generic audit criteria as required by the standard. Another very important form which we have updated, actually we have only rebranded, is the audit report of stage 1. But I would like here to put the emphasis on the aim of the stage 1 audit report. Its objective is to review the existing audit documentation of the management system that is being audited and to evaluate the preparedness to continue with the stage 2. Basically, it's not that this form has, has been changed. In case we want to go with the change, of course, we'll communicate it to you. The audit report for stage 2, you know that this serves as a profound base out of which PCB will come up with a certification decision. In this report, the certification scope shall reflect the same certification scope determined in the application form and also in the audit plan. In addition, audit criteria, which is noted in the audit plan, shall also be documented in the audit report of stage 2. While filling the audit report, we expect from all our auditors to follow the detailed justification approach per requirement/clause. Distinction between minor and nonconformities, major nonconformities, OFIs, and observations are described at the 4.1 audit finding definition in each audit report of PECB, which I think that you are familiar with. Now, I would like to continue with another very important form, which is mandatory to be filled during the stage 2 audit. This is the audit opening and closing form. This form is mandatory to be signed either electronically or handwritten by the auditee representatives that are participating in the opening and closing meeting during the audit. This form shall be submitted to PECB altogether with a stage 2 audit report. Related to the updates, this form has only been rebranded. Now I will continue with the policies. You know that we have general terms and conditions for PECB. This is basically the only agreement that PECB signs with the auditee. It is mandatory to be signed by the client and submitted to PECB 2 weeks before the audit commences. This is our new commitment. We have also another very important policy which will be shared with you. It is the Pecb Ms audit process. This is a policy that describes the audit process in details from the very beginning to the end. It basically shows do's and don'ts. This one will be shared with you also, so you can check in details the PECB requirements at each step. Another very important policy, actually a new policy, is the policy for scope statement, as mentioned a couple of minutes ago. This is a new policy we are introducing to you. The aim of this policy is to guide our auditors on how to determine or compose a qualitative scope statement, which will be shown in the certificate. The certificate will also include exclusion of clauses for the audited standards. This policy will be also shared with you on Tuesday. Another internal policy that we use here is a policy for duration for management system audits. It is existing internal policy that sets the limits on how we set the audit duration. This is for internal use only, and it was updated as per the ISO IEC 17021 and also EF mandatory documents requirements. Another concerning policy for this webinar is the management system certification guidelines. This is a policy that sets the path of functioning between the engaged parties when managing an audit. It responds mainly to frequently asked questions on the roles of, for example, managing partner, auditor, and Pecb Ms in an audit process. Related to this part that mentions the auditor documentation, my colleague Carolina will give you more information about this. Now, we're talking about the audit phase. In this section, I would like to elaborate more on ISO 9001 and ISO 14001. Or we are going to cover the steps that we expect from our auditors during the audit phase. Basically, the first phase is going to be the first thing in this phase is going to be the MS application form, which will be reviewed and approved by Pecb Ms. Another very important commitment of Pecb Ms in this respect is that auditor will be approved in the moment where we receive the application form, because for 9001 and 14001, also for medical device management systems, will need to review the auditor's competence in specific business sectors or technical or main technical areas. Then what we expect before the audit is to have actually reviewed and approved and a risk assessment done for that specific client, audit plan, and approved auditor. Stage 1 audit report shall be submitted to Pecb for review as well, and shall be reviewed and approved only by Pecb before the stage 2 commences. And all the communication, you'll see later that all the communication is going to be strictly required to happen only with the lead auditor engaged in the specific audit. Basically, this is what I just mentioned. Communication will be centralized between Pecb and auditors from the beginning of the planning phase to the end of an audit process. Basically, the approval of audit report. Managing partners, if existing, will be only CC'd if they are required to do so. The idea here is to establish a direct communication with the auditor and to facilitate the reviewing process of the audit documentation. In addition, we'll make sure to get direct feedback from auditors on whether we should improve something or do something directly. Now, the certification, audit process, and guidelines for submission of audit documentation. The processes we have established are straightforward. We expect from all our partners and auditors to respect the above listed deadlines or commitments so we can assure a quick and qualitative service for the end client. As shown in this table, documentation shall be filled and submitted in batches within the given time frame. While if there is any managing partner in this process, they will be included in the communication only in the initial part, basically where the MS certification application is concerning. And then the approved lead auditor will take over the whole process and bring it to the end point, basically to the certification decision. In this point, I would like to share with you a very big news. In order to facilitate the whole process, Pecb is constantly working in developing a CRM, which will facilitate communication and timeframes a lot. Basically, it will be an online CRM where each auditor will have its own log information, and where the managing partners, if any, will be able to assign to review, to see the competencies of the auditor and to hire auditors from there. This is something that will be shared with you whenever it's ready. I think we are going to have the very first draft by the beginning of the next year. Now, I would like to go again to the pre-audit phase. What is expected? What are the steps? There are 6 steps in the pre-audit phase. The step 1 is partner or client submits the application and proposes the lead auditor. Then, the step 2 is PECB conducts the risk assessment, and if the application is approved, we set the audit duration. On the step 3, managing partner or Pecb Ms directly submits the quotation altogether with Pecb general terms and conditions to the client. At step 4, we expect the deal to be signed. At step 5, Pecb Ms reviews auditor's competence and approves it whenever it's compliant, of course, based on the submitted auditor documentation, including here competency for business sectors and also the audit log. In this step, PECB will establish direct contact with the lead auditor and ask him or her to submit 2 documents. One is a signed non-disclosure agreement, and the other one is a filled audit plan for the specific client. As a step 6 on the pre-audit phase is that PECB will review and approve the audit plan if everything is compliant with the approved MS application form. On the audit phase, as a step 1 will be the stage 1 audit. At this stage, no matter whether the client came via managing partner, the lead auditor shall conduct the opening meeting by representing himself or herself as a PECB Ms auditor and briefly introduce them to what PECB Ms is about. Basically, this is what is expected always from our auditors. Then the auditor shall continue with documentation review by evaluating the maturity of the audited management system and validating whether or not to go into stage 2. It is with the utmost importance that at this stage, auditors shall communicate the plan to the auditee about stage 2. In case where the auditee is a multi-site, the lead auditor is always expected to share with the auditee the site sampling form, which is approved by PECB Ms for the multi-site organizations. As a step 2 in the audit phase, it's where auditor submits the audit report to PECB within 24 hours after the stage 1 is over. Then, PECB Ms will review the audit report and in case of additional reviews, will contact the auditor to do the required reviews. Then auditor will continue with the stage 2 audit by filling the audit report as per the guidelines indicated in the audit report template by using a clause-by-clause justification approach. The next step in the audit phase is that we expect that within 24 hours after the audit is concluded, lead auditor to send us to PECB 2 documents, which is a completed stage 2 audit report and a signed audit opening and closing meeting form. Now, what are the steps of the post-audit phase? In the post-audit phase, PECB Ms and auditor will be in constant communication until the certification decision is delivered to the client. During this phase, there may be a task like, for example, requirement for additional reviews in the submitted audit documents, or in case of non-conformities, auditor shall be in touch with the client until the corrective actions are submitted and validated by him or her. At the very last stage of this process, PECB will ask the lead auditor to validate the certificate data, of course, if the certification decision is positive. These data are name, address, certification scope, excluded clauses, etc. Then, Pecb Ms will directly communicate the certification decision and send the temporary certificate to the client. This is not the end of the process, because then we'll expect that surveillance audit to happen on a regular basis as well. For this purpose, reminders will be sent in regular basis to managing partners or clients directly. By following the steps described so far, our aim is to become the fastest certification body worldwide, as Tim stated in the beginning. Again, this is something that we cannot do without having the commitment of our network, especially our auditors. In this respect, we'll be constantly demanding from your side to respect our calls so we can jointly reach many other successful milestones in the future. So far, this was all from my side. I would like to thank you very much for your attention. And now I will leave the floor to our compliance director, who will cover the audit program.
Thank you very much, Asad. Can everyone hear me? Or can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so can we go to the next slide? Okay, thank you, Asad. So in here, basically, as Asad mentioned, we want to clarify or make a refresh for some of you who already know about this Pecb auditor certification program scheme. In general terms, you can see here that we have 4 levels of auditors, and so they are trainee, MS auditor, interim MS auditor, MS auditor, or MS lead auditor. Each one of these levels has its own requirements. Therefore, we have several categories of requirements that need to be fulfilled to achieve each one of the levels. And we will go into the details for each category in the next slides. The difference basically between the levels interim MS auditors and MS auditor or MS lead auditor, as you can see, is the CMSA. CMSA, as we will see also in the next slides, stands for the Certified Management System Auditor Training. We will also cover some aspects about the witness audit and how we need to go through this process. Another important element here is the difference between MS auditor and MS lead auditor. We can see in the box for the lead auditor that we are requiring 3 audits as lead auditor to become an MS lead auditor. So that's the main difference. Okay, so now we're going to go into the details of each of the categories and the requirements. Can we go to the next slide, please, Isaac? Thank you. So for step number 1, we are seeing here the initial or basic requirements. We are seeing here that we have requirements for education and training certification and personal behavior and competence that are mandatory for all MS auditor levels. Work experience and audit experience are mandatory for all levels except for the trainee level, as we saw in the previous table. So in here, for education, we are requiring to have evidence of at least secondary level education. Training and certification, we are requiring to have a valid ISO lead auditor certificate. And this training should be 40 hours training. For work experience, we are requiring to have at least 5 years of professional work experience, 2 of which should be relevant experience in the implementation, operation, and or auditing of management systems involving the exercise of judgment, which is very important. In terms of audit experience, we're requiring that the auditor has performed at least 4 complete audits, the total duration of which should be a minimum of 20 days. And for the lead auditor, as we said, at least 3 days of these audits that where he performed as a lead auditor or team leader. In terms of personal behavior and competence, we are requiring auditors to be able to demonstrate the best personal behavior necessary to carry out these audits. And we based this assessment on well-defined clauses of ISO 19011 and Annex D of ISO 17021, where we have a description of all the characteristics of the personal behavior and competence required by auditors. Can we go to the next slide, please? In terms of mandatory documents, we are requiring auditors to demonstrate that they fulfill basic requirements in terms of a certification package, is how we call it. And this certification package includes the auditor application form, the auditor competence form, the audit log, and the auditor agreement. So with this information, in PCB, we'll be able, to review if the requirements have been fulfilled. So that's the step where we are going to review these mandatory documents. It's very important that for specific standards that have some technical industry areas, like for example, ISO 9001, 14001, ISO 13485, applicants need to also provide evidence of the experience on the specific business sector, economic activity of the audited clients. And an audit log has been updated to satisfy this requirement. This was raised by one of the audits that we were conducted for PCB, and this was very important, and a very important point raised by the auditors. If we go to the next slide, please. Step number 3 is the interview. So for the interview, we will have this done by the auditor program manager. And if the positive evaluation is achieved, and we consider that the auditor has also met all the requirements described in the previous slides, then he will have a status of an interim auditor. So he will be approved as interim auditor. This interim approved auditor will be able to perform also audits, and they will have 1 year to change this status, either to an MS auditor or to a lead auditor, because if this doesn't happen in 1 year, then this status will be revoked, and until the auditor fulfills the requirements. And within this year, it will be the time for this interim auditor to complete the PCB Certified Management Systems Auditor training that we will explain in the next slides. And he will also have to be observed by PCB Trusted Witness Auditor while conducting an audit. So Trusted Witness Auditor is also referred as TWA, and we will give you the details of that also in the next slides. So if you remember the first table, we said that all levels need to pass an interview. So this is necessary for any level of auditors. We can go to the next one. Okay. So step number 4 is how to become a fully approved MS auditor or lead auditor. As you may imagine, to become a fully approved MS auditor and lead auditor, you need to pass all the precedent requirements, which are, as we said, documentation and professional experience, the interview, the CMSA training, and the witness audit. And depending on the experience, the person will achieve a status either of a PCB certified MS auditor, who can perform audits as a team member or as a sole auditor, and he can also be certified as an MS lead auditor, who can perform audits as a lead auditor by managing an audit team. This certification is valid for 3 years, and during this period, all auditors will be evaluated on a continuous basis by different means. One will be observation of the audits, review of the records, how auditors are filling out the stage 1 or stage 2 reports, for example, feedback from client, and post-audit reviews. Next one, please, Asad. So we mentioned that one of the requirements is to pass a certified management system auditor training. This training is specially designed and intends to prepare the PCB certified auditors in terms of techniques and to comply with processes and procedures for PCB. Attending this training and passing the exam is mandatory. And this, as we said, has to be completed within 1 year from getting the interim status. To complete this CMSA, we have two options: either fast track or normal track. For fast track, this is oriented to experienced auditors, so they need to have 10 or more years of experience in third-party audits. And in this case, they will have to go only to the last day of the CMSA training course. It will be done online through a webinar, and at the end, they will have to complete an exam. To be eligible for this, auditors need to provide evidences to PCB. One of them is that they are approved by another accredited certification body or 3 audit reports. And we know that this might be a problem regarding confidentiality, so we will discuss, for each of these cases, what can we do about that. And we also have the normal track, which is to go through the full CMSA training course. In terms of these required exam, it's an open book exam. And as for all PCB courses, there is also a CMSA exam preparation guide. We can go to the next one. Thank you. Now, remember I also mentioned that to become an MS auditor or LA auditor, you need to be witness, right? And who is going to witness the audit is the trusted witness auditor. This is a role where auditors will be observing other auditors. And at the same time, they will be part of the audit team during the audit. So 2 main objectives. So being part of the audit team, but as well being able to observe this auditor that is in the process of getting PCB certified. And this accreditation consists of 3 steps. So to become a TWA status, to have this status, you have to, 1, have already the Certified MS Auditor certificate, plus 500 hours of relevant audit experience, and have completed 5 audits for PCB as a lead auditor. Step number 2, you need to pass a TWA exam, which will be based on situational questions. And step number 3, sorry, there's a typo there. You will be observing and participating in an audit with a potential PCB certified MS auditor. This type of program was developed by PCB to offer it for the most experienced auditors. You can go to the next one. And here we wanted to give you a refresher of why it is important to join Pecb Ms. So, as mentioned before, we have these 4 levels. So, if you are a trainee MS auditor, you can be part of an audit team. If you are interim MS auditor, you can be part of an audit team, but you can also conduct audits as sole auditor. If you become an MS auditor, you can also be part of this audit team, obviously. You can conduct audits also as sole auditor, but, and this is the most important thing for MS auditor and MS lead auditor, is that you will be prioritized when selecting auditors, which is why we encourage you to become a certified MS auditor, either auditor or lead auditor. Can we go to the next one, please? Thank you, Seth. To wrap up the presentation, we wanted you to know what are the next steps that we are considering to be able to implement MS 2.0. So here you can have a look about the important dates. So as you can see, number 1, June 27, today, we need you to understand the main changes. We know that you will have many questions and we will be answering them. But for us, it's very important that you have an overview of what's been changed, what new documents you're going to be seeing. So this is the main objective for today. On July 2nd, you will receive an email from us where we will be sharing a link to access the documentation presented today. And I was reading some of the questions and answering them. So for most of you who were asking about where can we have this information or documentation accessible, well, on Tuesday, we'll share the link with you. And also in this email, and it's very important for us, we will send a mandatory confirmation agreement to be signed by all attendees and to be sent back to PCB by July the 8th. And here you will be saying that you attended the course that or the webinar and that you understand the changes and that you will be using the forms, the new ones, etc. From July the 2nd until July 24, we want you to get familiar with the documents, because on the 2nd, as we said, we're going to send you the link. You're going to be able to read the documents and be familiar with them. And also with processes, new addresses, new timeframes, and all the commitments. And the 4th and last step is that on July 25th, it will be the effective date for Pecb Ms 2.0, which means basically that from that date, we will only be accepting the new forms, which is for us is very important that we have your confirmation that you will be using them and that we will send you the letter to be signing that. And I think that was it, Asad. Yeah. So thank you very much, everyone, for attending this webinar. We have received, as I said, many questions, so we are going to try to answer them. We received them through the webinar software. And for other questions that you may have, because we know we presented a lot of information, so we kindly ask you to please contact us at, and we are giving you this email address that you are probably already familiar with. So it's ms@pecb-ms.com.
Thank you, Carolina. Thank you, Esat, for this presentation. And thank you for your attention to all the attendees. I just wanted to finally add that and to reinstate again that the importance of this webinar and the changes is always to make sure that we improve our services, we become more efficient, and we become the best certification body in the world and in the market out there. We know that there is still work to do and improvements to be made. But for this, we kindly ask for the cooperation of everyone. And some of the requirements that we have added, we are aware that may be more than we tend to ask before. And in terms of documentation, in terms of being quickly on providing responses and submitting the documentation. But the overall goal is to make sure that we can build and establish processes so that we are able to issue the certification within 1 week. And for this, we need to receive the audit reports on time and all audit supportive documentation to make sure that they are in correct order and with sufficient information for us to make the evaluation and the decisions on them, so that we are able to also provide the same support back and the same decisions. We are committed to continually improve, whether that be it in enhancing the technological and tools out there. As Esat mentioned, we are working in creating a CRM or a platform that will enhance and make all the processes and documentation and the audit process in overall more efficient. But we are also committed to improve when it comes to human resources, to marketing, to support. So feel free to let us know and to share your feedback with us. We have received a lot of questions, and Carolina and I have been trying to respond to many of them. There are many of others that we do not have time to cover today, but we will respond via email individually. Some of the comments or concerns expressed to the time for responding or sending the audit reports due to traveling and other reasons will all be taken into consideration. And but I wanted to emphasize again that whatever other questions that you need, I've seen some very important, detailed but important questions, such as the time duration between stage 1 and stage 2, or what if clients ask for more than 12 months of surveillance audit. Whatever questions or something that is not clear, I highly recommend you send us now so that we can define and make sure that all of them are duly documented, so that as of July 25th, we are all on the same page, and then we can move forward together to provide world-class services. Thank you very much, and have a great day.